When it comes to film criticism, most of us, like me, simply bitch about movies. But there are a special, select few who do something about it. A fan edit is when a dedicated, movie-loving hero takes a film where they see something that can be improved, and damn it, they improve it. Whether you're Topher Grace or just some guy with some decent editing skills, anybody can be a fan editor. And there have been some great ones out there. I personally have only just recently started to get into them, and I'd like to talk about my top 10 fan edits. First up is a fan edit by a guy named Job Willens. It's called Man of Tomorrow. It takes Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and combines them into one 2-hour and 37-minute running film. This actually works extremely well. It cuts out a lot of the gratuity that can be found in both movies, streamlines the plot, and creates a pretty seamless movie-going experience. The same can also be said for number 2 on my list, The Hobbit, the Ed Edit. This Tolkien fan took the 3 Hobbit movies, which are based on one little book, but they turned The Hobbit into a trilogy of films that runs like 10 hours long. And this fan took that mess and he cut it down to about 4 hours and 20 minutes. It's a much better movie-going experience than we got from the actual Hobbit movies. It cuts out all of the fat, all of the stuff that was never in the Tolkien book. And hey, I'm not a Tolkien fan, guys. I'm sorry. I know that is a horrible thing for a nerd to say, but I was never into the books. I only know the movies, but even I recognized all of the fat that could be found in the Hobbit trilogy that we got from Peter Jackson. This edit suffers from what many fan edits do, which is continuity errors. For instance, when the dwarves go to reclaim the mountain, several of them stay behind in Lake Town. Now, if you watch the uncut version of The Hobbit, you see how those dwarves got into the mountain after the death of Smaug. But here in this fan edit, they just sort of magically appear. They're just there. And it's not the editor's fault. He cut out the stuff that needed to be cut out. That's no fault of the editor. He did a great job. But in doing so, certain continuity errors were going to appear. One such fan edit that does not suffer from this is Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. Really, Kill Bill was always meant to be one movie, and it does actually exist in that form. Tarantino has a version of Kill Bill called The Whole Bloody Affair. I remember pre-ordering the DVD in 2006 from Amazon, and it just sort of sat there and sat there and sat there and then disappeared. And the movie has to this day never materialized in a singular form. Well, that didn't sit well with actually many fan editors. I don't know which cut I actually have, but the version I do have, unfortunately, suffers from only having the movies to work from. The editor cut the 2 Kill Bill movies into one movie as best he could, but there's things that are missing, things that only exist in this Tarantino cut, which is actually played in theaters before. Things such as an extended anime sequence are missing from this cut. It's a noble effort, but really, the day that Tarantino decides to release Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair on Blu-ray, I'll be deleting this fan edit from my computer. Next up is the single supercut of Stephen King's It. I loved It Chapter 1. I had a very mixed feeling about It Chapter 2. This cut is way better. It's a way better version of both movies, actually. It intercuts the 2 movies together into one 4-hour and 16-minute movie-going experience. This editor was not content to just take the first movie, cut out the closing credits, and then stick the second movie on. No. This editor went above and beyond, and he cut the 2 movies so that they go back and forth in time the way that the novel does. The end of the movie, where the Losers Club faces off against Pennywise, cuts back and forth between the end of the first movie where they fight the clown and the end of the second movie where they fight the clown. It is really gripping. It's fantastically done. I don't know how he did it, because one thing that fan edits really have to try and get around, it's not the picture, it's the sound. Because he's cutting back and forth between these two movies that are using different music tracks. This should have been a mess, but somehow this guy, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the editor for this one, he did a great job. It's better than the movies that we got. If they ever do come out with a supercut of it, I don't know that they could do the climax better than this editor did. Next up is a nearly 4-hour-long fan edit of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. If you're a fan of the Clone Wars cartoon show, then you know that the last few episodes are set at the same time as Revenge of the Sith. This cuts back and forth between what's going on in Revenge of the Sith and what's going on in Clone Wars. Obviously, this can be a bit jarring because you're cutting from live action to animation. So it's not seamless. But I was riveted watching this. It created an entirely new experience for me. I always have thought that the Clone Wars cartoon show actually improves the prequel trilogy. If you watch episode 1 and 2, and then you watch the Clone Wars, you actually then care more when you watch Revenge of the Sith because you know these characters better, even the smaller, minor characters. Now, to me, if I were to ever do that kind of a marathon again and watch episode 1, 2, and then Clone Wars, I'd finish it off with this fan edit. Sticking with Star Wars, I have a fan edit of A New Hope, which incorporates into it the end of Rogue One and a fan recreation of the lightsaber duel between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. This was a fantastic fan-funded project, and man, do they improve on that lightsaber duel. Suddenly, it is violent, it is brutal. This is the confrontation between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader that we always wanted. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can I complain about Greedo shooting first and other George Lucas special edition nonsense inclusions and then support this? Well, if I'm going to watch Star Wars, I'm probably going to watch the official movie. But it is fun to see a more thrilling lightsaber duel when Vader and Obi-Wan confront each other for the first time since Mustafar. But it wasn't the first time, was it? No, they did fight again between Mustafar and the Death Star, didn't they? Yes, they did. They fought each other again in the terrible Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus show. I got about 3 episodes into this thing before I gave up. I seriously fucking love Obi-Wan Kenobi. He is my favorite Star Wars character. And I was bored to tears watching this Disney Plus show. I was so looking forward to it. And it pretty much killed any enthusiasm I have for future Star Wars content. But then came the Patterson cut. The Patterson cut right now might be one of the most famous fan edits of all time. It took the 6 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi and it cut it down into a 2.5-hour movie. The way it always should have been, the way that it originally was intended to be, as a single movie. And now think about this. Each of those 6 episodes is almost an hour long. And this Patterson guy cut it down to 2.5 hours. That is how much fat was on the story. Now look, I still have problems with this. I don't like Obi-Wan and Leia knowing each other and having this adventure. I don't like Obi-Wan and Vader facing off again. Really, as far as I'm concerned, this isn't canon. At least up here, it's not canon. That said, Patterson actually manages to make me invested in the story. As much as I have my problems with the story, he actually makes it so that I was compelled by it. I watched the whole thing all the way through. I was just going to watch it for a little while out of curiosity because I thought it can't be that much better. It is significantly better. It is the way to watch this story. Although, there is a second Obi-Wan Kenobi fan edit that I do have. This version is called Kenobi, a Star Wars story. Why did I get this version if I already had the Patterson cut? Well, because it does 2 things that I think are actually superior to the Patterson cut. It cuts out the entire rescue of Leia from that stupid Imperial base. They also de-age Hayden Christensen, something that I can't believe Disney didn't do. Disney knows how to do that. Disney knows how to do that better than anybody else, and they didn't do it with Hayden Christensen. It is baffling that they have this guy in his late 40s pretending to be 19 years old. It is so distracting, I couldn't get over it. And so when I found out that there was a cut out there that de-aged Hayden Christensen, I was like, it's a little bit longer, but actually I kind of want to see this. Now, one fan edit that I'm not as crazy about, but it's of one of my favorite movies of all time, is Superman, the Richard Donner vision by Fran Garcia. Now, this takes Superman 1 and 2 and cuts them together into a single movie. And it does so pretty seamlessly, but the changes that had to be made bothered me. For instance, Superman spinning the world backwards, which is the climax of the first Superman movie, is moved to be the climax of Superman 2. Now, I know that that is the way Richard Donner actually originally wanted it to be. Really, they just ran out of time filming Superman, and they were like, shit, we don't have an ending for this. We're going to have to stick the end of Superman 2 onto here. But for me, it works. And it's one of the most powerful moments in any movie for me, is Superman finding Lois dead. He's managed to save all of these other people, but he hasn't managed to save the woman he loves. And he's so grief-stricken that he takes off into the sky and he spins the world backwards, reverses time, and gives himself a chance to save Lois. Now, people point out that this is nonsensical and everything, but I always look at Superman the way I look at Peter Pan. He is a fairy tale character. I can buy him spinning the world backwards. Him spinning the world backwards at the end of 2 doesn't work for me at all. And that alone makes this so that while it's an interesting watch and something that I do hold on to on my computer, it's not something that I really think I'll go back and rewatch all that much. The movie that I would go back and rewatch is Finest Hour. This is a very interesting fan edit, and in my opinion, the best fan edit I've ever seen. Because what it does is it doesn't take 2 movies in the same franchise and cut them together. It takes 2 different movies and seamlessly, flawlessly cuts them together. Those 2 movies being Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk and the Gary Oldman starring Darkest Hour. Darkest Hour stars Gary Oldman in an Oscar-winning performance as Winston Churchill and deals with him becoming prime minister and having to take on the Nazis. One of the main things in that movie is Churchill orchestrating the rescue of the soldiers who were stranded on the beach of Dunkirk. You would think cutting together 2 movies from 2 different directors would clash, and it doesn't. It's seamless. It's fantastic. It's actually the best way to watch either movie.
We shall defend our island whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches.
We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender!
I prefer this version to Dunkirk, and I prefer this version to Darkest Hour. This is the way that I will always want to watch these 2 movies, is intercut into this new movie. It's awe-inspiring what this fan editor did. And I want to give a shout out to Maple Films, who created Finest Hour. What this fan edit does is it gives some context to the movie Dunkirk. It shows you what's going on back in England as they're trying to orchestrate this rescue. And what it does for Darkest Hour is it gives some emotional resonance. It shows you the soldiers on the beach, the people they're trying to save. Darkest Hour was, for my money, it was a little bit dry. This changes that. It makes it a better movie. Fan editors should be commended. They are the ultimate film critics. They don't just sit here, like me, and say, this is why this movie was terrible. They take these movies, they look for what's good. They look for what can be salvaged from a train wreck like The Hobbit or Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, and they make something decent out of it. Or they take something great like Star Wars or Kill Bill, and they make it better. You might have to put on an eye patch and a peg leg to go looking for these movies, but I highly encourage you to do so. If you were disappointed by a movie, or if you're just looking for a new spin on it, there's fan edits for all sorts of movies out there. Dramas, comedies, musicals, action movies, science fiction, horror, you name it, somebody has seen potential and done something different. And isn't that what the movies is all about? That creative spark? So I highly suggest tracking these down. It's worth it.